A dozen Ulian warriors lay eviscerated across the blood-soaked sandy dunes, their grey-green innards melting in the triple suns, as John Reyes lowered his plasma rifle, the barrel glowing hot from eliminating the last of the aliens who had made the fatal mistake of killing an innocent 12-year-old human girl named Lila. "Commander Reyes, respond immediately!" The urgent message from the Galactic Council blared through his wrist communicator as the searing desert wind kicked up sand around his combat boots. John grunted his acknowledgement, then began trudging through the carnage towards his waiting dropship. 3 days ago, he had stood in the towering council chambers, an array of slender alien leaders and insectoid Ulian representatives seated before a massive holographic display showing the hostage video of young Lila, gagged and bound by the extremist faction. "The Ulians demand we cede several star systems, or they will execute the girl in 48 hours, the council leader had explained in a somber tone. "We need your unique skills to handle this, Commander. You have full authority to assemble a team and requisition any resources needed. But the girl's life is paramount. We cannot risk a diplomatic incident over this." As he had turned to leave and start his mission, Belos, a familiar Ulian warrior who had clashed with John in the past, stepped from the shadows. "I will accompany you, human," he had rasped, "to ensure you do not overstep your bounds." John had simply nodded curtly, gritting his teeth. "Just stay out of my way, bug." The message was clear. Nothing would stop him from saving the innocent girl's life. No price was too high. No blood was too precious to spill. The Ulians would learn to regret the day they had abducted a human child. Now only one objective remained: get Lila home safely to her parents, and show the Ulians the true wrath and power of the human race when one of their own was threatened. John would do whatever it took to send an unforgettable message to the aliens. For the galaxy's most fearsome warrior, it was not just a mission, it was personal. "Sci-Fi." John's hands flew over the Spectre's controls, the ship responding like an extension of his own body, as he wrenched it into a dizzying barrel roll. Plasma bolts sizzled past the cockpit, the Ulian fighters hot on their tail. Zalcor manned the rear guns, his massive frame hunched over the weapons console as he returned fire, the ship shuddering with each recoil. "Kalthos, I need more power to the engines," John barked, sweat beading on his brow as he pushed the Spectre to its limits. The avian engineer chirped an affirmative, his talons a blur as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. With a sudden burst of speed, the Spectre shot forward, leaving the Ulian fighters in its wake. John didn't ease up on the throttle, skimming the ship mere meters above the cratered surface of Zarax Prime's fourth moon, using the terrain to mask their approach to the secret base. As they neared the facility, Mira slipped from her seat, her cloaking device shimmering to life around her lithe form. "I'm going in," she said, her voice barely a whisper over the comm. "Keep the engine running." John brought the Spectre to a hovering stop in a shallow crater near the base's perimeter, the ship's matte black hull blending seamlessly with the shadows. Minutes crawled by, with no word from Mira, the tension in the cockpit thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly Mira's voice crackled over the comm, her tone urgent. "John, you need to hear this." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a dimly lit room filled with tanks of bubbling liquid, each containing a pale, still form. Human children, their bodies riddled with tubes and wires. Lila floated among them, her once vibrant face now slack and lifeless. "They've been experimenting on them, trying to create some kind of hybrid super-soldier," Mira explained, her voice tight with anger. "Lila was just one of many." A cold, hard knot formed in John's gut, his fingers tightening around the controls until the polymer creaked. "We're not just here for Lila anymore," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "We're shutting this whole thing down and getting every last kid out of there." Zalcor flashed a predatory grin, his teeth glinting in the dim light of the cockpit. "Now you're speaking my language, Reyes." "I've disabled the base's security systems," Mira reported. "You should be clear to—" A sudden burst of static cut her off, followed by the sound of plasma fire and shouting. "Mira, Mira, come in," John called, but there was no response. We have to move now. John leapt from his seat, grabbing his rifle and charging down the ramp, Zalcor and Belos close on his heels. They stormed the base like a force of nature, plasma bolts filling the air as they cut through the Ulian guards like a scythe through wheat. Belos moved with a speed and grace that belied his insectoid bulk, his natural armor deflecting the guards' shots as he struck them down with ruthless efficiency. For all his earlier hostility toward John, the Ulian proved himself a formidable ally in the heat of battle. They fought their way deeper into the base, following the twisting corridors toward the heart of the facility, where Mira had discovered the captive children. As they burst into the central chamber, John's heart clenched at the sight of the young faces, pale and frightened, trapped in their liquid prisons. Kalthos darted forward, his deft talons making short work of the restraints holding the children in place. "We need to hurry," he urged, his feathers ruffled with agitation. "There's no telling what." A bone-chilling shriek cut him off, as a hulking figure burst from the shadows, all glistening chitin and razor-sharp claws. It was a monstrosity, a twisted fusion of Ulian and human DNA, its mandibles dripping with corrosive acid. The creature lunged at John with blinding speed, its claws screeching against his armor, as he barely managed to dodge aside. Zalcor opened fire, but the beast's hide seemed to absorb the plasma bolts, leaving only scorch marks in their wake. John realized with a sinking feeling that this abomination was the end result of the Ulian's experiments, a super soldier born of the stolen essence of human children. Rage boiled up inside him, white-hot and all-consuming, as he launched himself at the creature, his blade flashing in the dim light. The battle was brutal and desperate, a whirlwind of claws and blades and acid. Belos and Zalcor fought with everything they had, but it was John who faced the creature head-on, his armor smoldering from its caustic blood, his face a mask of grim determination. This wasn't just about completing the mission anymore. It was about making sure no more innocent lives were sacrificed on the altar of the Ulian's twisted ambitions. It was about sending a message, loud and clear, that humanity would not tolerate such atrocities. John poured every ounce of his skill and strength into the fight, the fate of the children hanging in the balance. He knew that if he failed here, their blood would be on his hands, and that was a weight he refused to bear. John leapt at the creature, slamming into its chitinous bulk with bone-jarring force. They crashed through a tank of glowing liquid, the glass shattering around them as they tumbled to the floor in a tangle of limbs. The hybrid monstrosity shrieked, its razor-sharp claws scrabbling for purchase against John's armor. "Get the kids out of here," John roared, grappling with the beast. Its strength was monstrous, but John's rage burned hotter than 1,000 suns. He pummeled the creature with his armored fists, cracking its exoskeleton and sending ichor spraying. Zalcor and Belos charged into the fray, their weapons forgotten as they tore at the beast with tooth and claw. Belos ripped one of its arms free with a sickening crunch, while Zalcor clamped his jaws around its neck, worrying at it like a rabid dog. The creature thrashed and bucked, smashing through equipment and sending sparks flying. John held on tight, his muscles screaming with effort. With a final, desperate heave, he wrenched the creature's head to the side, exposing its throat. Zalcor lunged, his teeth sinking deep into the soft flesh beneath the exoskeleton. The creature convulsed, its lifeblood gushing from the wound. It collapsed to the floor, twitching feebly as the last of its strength ebbed away. An alarm blared through the facility, red lights flashing in warning. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," a cool mechanical voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately." John staggered to his feet, his armor dented and scorched. "Kalthos, get those kids to the Spectre. Mira, find us a way out of here. Zalcor, Belos with me. We need to buy them time." They raced through the crumbling corridors, the ground shaking beneath their feet as the base tore itself apart. Ulian stragglers emerged from side passages, their weapons blazing, but John and his team cut them down without breaking stride. Mira guided them through the labyrinth, her voice calm and steady over the comm even as debris rained down around them. They burst into the hangar, just as the Spectre lifted off, Kalthos at the controls. The children huddled in the cargo bay, their faces pale with fear. But there was no time for relief. A swarm of Ulian drones poured into the hangar, their weapons locked onto the fleeing ship. John, Zalcor, and Belos took up positions around the hangar, their rifles spitting plasma as they fought to cover the Spectre's escape. It was a desperate last stand, with the three warriors facing impossible odds. They moved as one, their skills honed by countless battles, but the drones kept coming, an endless tide of metal and death. Just as it seemed they would be overrun, a shadow fell across the hangar. The Galactic Council's flagship loomed overhead, flanked by a fleet of warships from a dozen allied species. Lances of energy rained down from the fleet, tearing through the Ulian drones like paper. As the last of the drones fell, John, Zalcor, and Belos limped aboard the flagship, their armor scorched and their bodies battered. The council leader was waiting for them, his expression grim. "Commander Reyes," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility, "you've uncovered a conspiracy that threatens the very fabric of our society. The Ulians will face justice for their crimes, but this is just the beginning. We need you and your team now more than ever." John slumped into a chair in the flagship's medbay, his battered armor clattering to the floor. Zalcor and Mira sat nearby, their wounds being tended to by the ship's medical staff. Belos stood apart from the others, his chitinous frame rigid with tension. The council leader entered, his face grave. "Commander Reyes, we've uncovered the full extent of the Ulian conspiracy. The experiments on human children were just the beginning." He brought up a holographic display, showing schematics for an army of hybrid super-soldiers. They planned to use these abominations to overthrow the Galactic Council and establish a new order with themselves at the top. John's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white. The horrors he had witnessed, the innocent lives destroyed, it had all been for this twisted plan. The rescued children, pale and haunted, huddled together in the medbay. Some cried for their parents, while others stared blankly into space. John watched as council representatives spoke with each child, determining their fate. Some would be reunited with their families on Earth, their memories of the ordeal erased. Others, too changed by the experiments, would be placed with families among the stars, finding new homes and purpose. In the weeks that followed, John threw himself into his work with a fury he had never known. He and his team scoured the galaxy, rooting out any remnants of the Ulian conspiracy. They raided hidden bases, dismantled secret laboratories, and brought the conspirators to justice. The Council granted them unprecedented authority, and they became a force to be reckoned with, feared by the guilty and respected by the just. But the scars ran deep, and trust was a fragile thing. Belos, torn between his duty to his people and his loyalty to the team, made a difficult decision. He resigned from the task force and returned to his homeworld, determined to lead the Ulians down a new path of cooperation and unity. As John watched Belos's ship disappear into the void, he felt a pang of loss. The bond they had forged in battle, the respect they had earned, it felt like it was slipping away. But he knew Belos was doing what he believed was right, and he could only hope that one day the wounds between their peoples could be healed. Years passed, and the galaxy slowly began to change. The Ulian conspiracy had been a wake-up call, a reminder of the dangers of hatred and division. New alliances were forged, old grudges set aside, and at the center of it all was John and his team, tireless in their efforts to maintain the peace. One day, as John sat in his quarters aboard the Spectre, a message arrived from Earth. It was from Lila, the girl he had rescued all those years ago. She was a woman now, a leader in her own right. She spoke of the challenges she had faced, the prejudice and fear that still lingered. But she also spoke of hope, of the progress she had seen. The galaxy was changing, and it was thanks to people like John. As the message ended, John leaned back in his chair, a bittersweet smile on his face. They had won a great victory, but at a terrible cost. Friends lost, innocence shattered, scars that would never fully heal. But they had also forged unbreakable bonds, had stood together against the darkness and prevailed. He thought of his team, of Zalcor's fierce loyalty, Mira's quiet strength, Kalthos' brilliant mind. They had been through hell together, had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer, but they had also seen the best, the courage, the compassion, the indomitable will of those who fought for what was right. John stood and made his way to the bridge, his steps heavy but his spirit unbowed. There was still work to be done, still battles to be fought. The scars of the past would always be with them, but they would also serve as a reminder of what truly mattered: the bonds of friendship, the strength of the human spirit, and the unending fight for justice in a dangerous and uncertain universe. As the Spectre leapt into the starry void, John knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he and his team would face them together. For in the end, that was all that mattered, not the accolades or the glory, but the knowledge that they had made a difference, that they had stood against the darkness and held the line. And as long as there were those willing to fight for what was right, there was still hope for the future. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.